On this episode of the So Many Roads podcast, we welcome our good friend Hillary, family and fellow traveler, bringing some jaw-dropping dead relics and stories from a modern Deadhead's perspective. So buckle up, kids, and thanks for tuning in. All right, Hill, talk to me about growing up. You lived in a really cool neighborhood, like a lot of old cottages, beach community. You're kind of on the cusp of like that age group that still probably got to roam wild.
Oh, I roamed.
So tell me about music in that childhood.
Well, classic 80s, early 80s childhood. My big musical taste when I was a kid was Michael Jackson. First and foremost, I was obsessed. Madonna was huge in my early years. And then as I got a little bit older, it was New Kids on the Block, Debbie Gibson, Paula Abdul. Those were some of my first concerts when I was a kid.
So it makes perfect sense that you became a Deadhead.
Right.
Right. So MTV. You were like perfect for the MTV generation, right? So you were a pop music person, but you had two older sisters, right? And I assume that had something to do with it. So let's talk about how you got into the Grateful Dead.
Yep. So definitely two older sisters and two older cousins that were sort of like brothers. And my eldest sister, Courtney, and my eldest cousin, Dan, they were 6 years older than me. So definitely like ahead of the curve in terms of their musical taste getting developed. And those two individuals are probably the most influential in shaping my musical tastes.
Let's rewind a little bit. So what did your family listen to?
He didn't really listen to me.
You weren't a big music?
We weren't a big music family. I remember like being in the car with my mom. She'd listen to the oldies station, which was probably actually like her era music. She loved Led Zeppelin,
okay.
The Beatles. But it wasn't like we were always spinning music in our house. I think maybe being on the, shoreline, we were listening more to the ocean waves. I don't know if that played a factor, but yeah, neither my mom or my dad were like huge music concert goers. They had a vinyl collection that mostly got played by us when we discovered it. And we were like, oh, let's start ripping through these records. And, they hadn't listened to it. They were collecting.
That's probably a cool experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I think a lot of us can relate to, discovering your parents' vinyl.
Yep.
All
the Beatles albums.
The best.
Yeah, I wish I still had them.
Me too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you actually got on the bus. Hey, Hill, how do we go from Madonna to the Grateful Dead? Get me on the bus.
I guess probably the first experience that got me, maybe queuing up in line for the bus was my first Phish show, which was probably a lot of people's first Phish show in the New Haven area. December 29th, 1993.
It was mine.
Yep. It was amazing. I had never experienced anything like it before. Wow.
Now, I wasn't VIP, but
You are VIP.
No, thank you. But I've decided off eBay I was going to buy backstage passes for all my influential concerts.
Amazing.
So yeah, same with me. That was incredible.
Yep. And like that whole experience was probably the most influential concert I had ever, still to this day, experienced.
But unlike me, you were super young, which is
13.
Crazy.
I was 13 and I cannot believe that my mother allowed me to go, because she kept me from going to other shows further down the road. But yeah, it was, again, two older sisters. They were all going. All their friends were going. And whatever inspired them to say, let's bring Hill along, I'm so grateful for. The whole experience was amazing. Going into the show, I remember those escalators like this, and everyone's lined up and everyone's excited and hooting and hollering. And
pretty significant snowstorm too.
And I was like, what is this? Like, up till then, my concert experience was Paula Abdul. Like, people just kind of like shuffling in and getting in their chair and watching the concert, clapping and, heading home. This was like, I remember this one chick with overalls on and she's dancing and shouting Paige's name and that she loves them. And I'm like, what is happening? Something's happening. The stage set up like an aquarium. It was amazing. And my sisters had already, I think it was Lawn Boy was the album that they first gave me. So I knew some of the songs and I was excited for some of the songs, but I had never experienced a musical energy like that before.
So it was it was Fish into Dead. All right, so how did that happen?
I don't really know. I know, from listening to Fish that segued into, I'm sure probably, Courtney gave me an album to listen to. Or I remember finding my parents' vinyl in the Skullfuck album. Like, I was like, well, this is cool. The graphics were cool. Turned it on. Is like, oh, this is awesome music. My Uncle Peter played American Beauty for me for the first time. And that, I remember that moment. And I think just as I kept growing up and listening, consuming more music, it was natural that the Grateful Dead came into the fold at some point along the way. I never had the chance to see Jerry. I think I got into the Grateful Dead after he had passed. I do remember the day he died and like that whole thing, and being sad that I never got to see him.
Well, you are a weird age for that, because again, you would have to have been 13 or 14 to go to a Grateful Dead concert.
Right.
So the fact that your parents let you go to a Fish concert, maybe they didn't know what Fish was, right? Because at that time, those Fish shows were still, I'm going to use the word gnarly. Like, I remember going to those early Fish shows once they started doing Coliseums and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is a lot like a Dead show. Not that I'd ever had been to one yet in 93, but there were like some real hippies there in those earlier Fish shows, big dreadlocks and stuff and spinners. And I was like, oh,
right.
I liked the Dead before I liked Fish. And so for me, that was kind of natural. But it's so interesting that it was the opposite direction.
Right. And I think once I embraced the Grateful Dead, like when I got turned on to the Grateful Dead music, it was more like the music is more poetic. Like the lyrics are poems. And
couldn't agree anymore.
More inspirational lyrics, more inspirational imagery. And I turned away from Fish then for a while. Like, I didn't see them in 97. Like, there were years where I kind of was like, I'm over Fish.
Yeah, Fish was fun. The Dead was spiritual for me.
Yes, same.
And I would argue it's the same now. The reason why you're on this podcast is you have an amazing relic. And I cannot wait to talk about it. I cannot wait to show the audience if they go onto the social media and look at our visuals. But what's crazy about you is that you texted me, I also have this. So I had to stop. I can only do a couple relics on the podcast per episode. So let's talk about the first one you have before we get into the really special one.
Yep.
Tell me about this.
This one's pretty cool. This is an original, I would call it a playbill, I guess. So the Fillmore East, back in the day, for all their shows, they put together these little programs with some information on the bands that were playing. There's some cool old like ads and stuff in here too. And sort of the calendar for what's coming up next. And back in graduate school, just like chatting with one of my professors, we figured out that we both had similar tastes in music. And he grew up in New York City in the, 60s, 70s. And he was like, oh, I went to, I have all these playbills from the Fillmore shows.
That he actually went
to. And he brought in a stack of them. And he's, look through them. I'm looking through them. And it was, amazing. And then he said, take a few. Which was even cooler. So I have a few of these, and this one in particular, so I've got a Derek and the Dominoes, a Frank Zappa, and then this one is the Grateful Dead from those Fillmore shows, late April 1971, which coincidentally enough is also one of the shows that really hooked me on the Grateful Dead via this bootleg right here, April 29th, 1971.
I can't believe you still have tapes.
Yeah, I can't let go of them. I have nothing to listen to them on, but they're just, this was such an influential part of what I would call my childhood, that it's hard to let go of.
So that's pretty neat that your professor was there, probably told you a little bit about it, and he let you keep the playbill.
Yeah.
These were very famous shows used on the Skull and Roses album, a couple of the tracks. And then in 2000, they mixed it down from the massive recorder they used at the Fillmore. I forget exactly how many tracks, but then they brought it down to stereo for the 2000 release that actually went gold, called Ladies and Gentlemen, the Grateful Dead. So that's a pretty great show.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then you hit me with this. You're like, oh, I also have a copy of Phil Lesh's book. Many of you know it, Searching for the Sound. My Life with the Grateful Dead. And I got to tell you, as soon as you texted me that, I was like, oh, I wish I still had my copy because, well, I kind of don't. I'll tell you why. But this book just was so powerful for me. To me, it's my favorite Grateful Dead book of all time because Phil described the musicality, in sort of an abstract way that I kind of knew, but it just really made sense to me. He talked about like things like negative space being important in music. And I think he called it cosmic flow, like when the band all attaches and, the music plays the band. We all know that lyric. And, Dave behind the camera and I used to be in a dad band, and we played some Dead songs. And, occasionally, and we were really just winging it most times, but occasionally I felt that where all of a sudden it was just like, oh, everything's clicking and something sort of cosmic is happening. So that was really this book. I love this book. So I'm so glad you mentioned this book. And unlike me, you went to the book signing that was just right down the road. I don't know what I was doing. I did have a baby. That's amazing.
That's a good excuse.
So tell me the story about your book signing with Phil Lesh.
Yep. So, like I had mentioned earlier, I never got to see Jerry. And Phil was, I saw a lot of different incarnations of the band. And it was Phil and Friends that really, that's probably the most, quantity and quality Grateful Dead experience that I've had.
Post Jerry.
Yeah, of course. So Phil is like a true love. And when I saw he was coming to, just down the road to the bookstore, I couldn't not take that opportunity. So I had a copy of the book and drove down there and, lined down the block. Ran into a number of, local people.
It's a pretty big Deadhead contingency where we grew up, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yep. So one fella and I were kind of in line together, and we come into the store, and he's still sitting there. And I was just like in awe just to be that close to him.
This was 2005, I assume, when the book came out. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So now we're, it's our turn. We're coming up, and me and this guy are both saying like all these glowing things about Phil and the Grateful Dead and our experiences and how important it is to us. And he just looks up at me and he's like, oh, and in Phil's, deep, froggy voice, oh, all this jubilation. And then he literally, I'm not kidding, I'm not worthy. I just was stunned. Phil Lesh saying he's not worthy
of your fandom.
Right.
What did you do?
I don't even know. I probably just giggled and laughed and cried a little bit. And, we shared just a moment. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Yeah, was he just bound to you, or was he also bound to the guy you're with? Just you, right? Yeah, just Phil.
Sorry, man.
Yeah. He signed it, didn't he? Let's see it.
He did. Yep. Right there.
Very cool. So you had a little moment with Phil Lesh. That's fantastic.
Yep.
All right. This is the Motherload Relic. I was lucky enough to get a glimpse of it a few years ago. Just a quick look. And now that I've started a podcast, I'm like, I got to get Hill on. Show me this guitar. Okay. So what we're looking at here is a D'Angelico XL Series DC, okay? And up top, we've got Grover Imperial tuners. We've got the Art Deco design, which, they're famous for with the Empire State Building. And then we've got that C-shaped neck with the rosewood and the mother of pearl inlays. down into those U.S. Seymour Duncan 59 humbuckers, okay? And then, it's a semi-hollow F-cut guitar that Bobby really likes to use this style. He's got a deal with them starting back in 2017. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Bobby Wears plays these sometimes on stage. I believe he touched this one. We know he touched this one because down below, we've got all of Dead and Company's signatures, okay? And they're pretty legible, it's legit. And you've got the paperwork and everything, and it's beautiful. It's a lightning bolt design. So how did you come across this? How have you gotten this into your possession? Let's hear the story.
Yeah, and I'm grateful all the time that I was lucky enough to win this.
It's beautiful.
It's stunning. And like I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but the blue kind of like sparkles. It's absolutely, and the wood detail, it's a beautiful guitar in and of itself, let alone the fact that all the members of the band signed it. 2016 tour, they were, I believe they were raffling off 2 of these. And then they had different styles that were for auction at various shows. All custom along that tour. And I was not trying to win this guitar. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was up at the Meadows, which it will always be the Meadows.
In Hartford, Connecticut.
Yep. It was June of 2016. And just before set break, Bobby was saying, taking a few minutes while we're on break, head out to participation row and register to vote. He was really rocking the vote.
Okay.
And he showed this picture of these vote pins that they were giving out. And I thought, well, that's cool. I need one of those.
Got a little lightning bolt there.
Yep.
In the L. That's really cool.
And so I headed out to participation row and I wanted my vote pin. And they were like, all right, well, they gave me some card. They're like, you got to get 3 stamps and then come back and we'll give you the pin. And you could do like various different things to get the stamps. So I took a picture for them with holding some sign with a hashtag or their social media or something. I forget what the second thing was. And then the third thing was just write down your email address. Easy enough. So I was, did the things, got my stamps, gave them knocked it out and was super psyched. I had the vote. Got the pin. I was put it right on. I was really pumped. And little did I know that entered me into the drawing to win this. So months later, I was leaving work for the weekend and the receptionist at work came and grabbed me. She's like, you just got some phone call. And so I took down the guy's number because I wasn't sure what this was all about. But he asked me if this was where you worked and does Hillary like the Grateful Dead? And I was like, well, what did you answer? What did you say?
That's kind of a weird question.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, I said yes. I'm like, all right, good. But I'm like, well, but what is this phone call anyway? What is this? So weird. This is so weird. So called the guy back and apparently they had been trying to email me with the email that I had put on the card, going right to spam, and I'm not looking at my junk mailbox.
I wonder how close you were to not getting this guitar.
I wonder too.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that they Googled me or whatever and tracked me down at my place of work. So I, connect and then we're back and forth on email and they didn't tell me what it was all about right away. They said that David Gans wanted to interview me on Tales from the Golden Road.
Before you even knew the guitar was yours?
Yes. And,
that's
and
really
he was
good.
like, trust me, this is a phone call that you're going to want to
This is a good thing.
Yeah, this is a good thing. It's a phone call you're going to want to take. And I'm like,
did you even make the connection?
Not yet.
Okay.
But I was like, this is so weird. What could possibly David Gans, what is this all about? And when I was talking with my sister, that's when we kind of put together, we're like, maybe it was this. I thought maybe I won concert tickets or, we weren't sure exactly what. And then we kind of figured it out that it was this. And then for whatever reason, the David Gans call didn't happen. It was New York City, I think that summer had rolling blackouts. And it was when the call was supposed to happen, there were some blackouts something happened. I never got interviewed by David Gans, which I'm kind of relieved because this is stressful enough to be here with someone I know.
So you had to go to New York City to pick it up?
So I had to go to New York City to pick it up. And they said that they would hook me up with concert tickets too. So, and they gave any show at various different, locations. So I timed it to go down and like see a show and get the guitar the next day. So I went to Headcount's office, which I believe was in Relic's magazine's office suite in New York City.
Fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like that was a cool experience in and of itself being there. Like I had read Relic's magazine for a decade or so at that point. So to see all the like memorabilia on the
Oh yeah, that must have been great.
It was cool, and had a nice like visit with them, and they showed me, presented me with the guitar and paperwork and all that, and then oddly or coincidentally enough, or however, whatever, the D'Angelico studio and like shop is like a block or two away from.
Yeah, I mean, it originally was a New York company, started way back like in the Depression.
Oh wow!
For jazz musicians, yeah, and it kind of went dormant from my research, and then it sort of came back maybe like, I don't know, like 15 years ago. They had some investors, and they're kind of modernized their guitars, but you can tell it's still got an old school vibe.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's the cutaway, it's the shape of it, the arch shape that Bobby really likes. It's sort of a jazzy sort of guitar, it's sort of one of those types of guitars that sort of meshes jazz and rock style, like a Gibson almost.
Right. Well, to me, it's a piece of art.
It is stunning.
I've played it a little bit, but I'm not much of a guitar player. At the fact when they told me that I won, I said, "Oh, geez, I'm going to have to take some lessons." And they said, "Oh, no, you're going to hang this on the wall."
Hang that on the wall.
Yeah. But I took it over to the D'Angelico studio, and that was a cool experience too. There's, all the different guitars, acoustic and electric and everything up along the walls, a couple little studio spaces. And then they had in the middle a stage set up. So naturally I took it out of its case and sat on the stage. And,
oh yeah? Did a little strumming?
Yeah. I was looking for a photo op, but it was fun. It was a cool experience. And I'm just like, again, I'm blown away by it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of art. And as a Grateful Dead fan, it's an incredible, relic.
Exactly. And that's why I had you on. I mean, all your other stories are amazing too, but this thing is really special. And I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you before we wrap this segment up. I've never told you this, but when I went to Fenway Park a couple weeks after the Dead and Company shows in Hartford in, what was this, 2016, right?
Yeah.
My friends and I walked in. For those of you guys know Fenway, it's kind of like under the bleachers off Yankee Way, and that's where Participation Row was. And they blew right by it. And I was like, whoa, you guys need to stop. I need to look at this thing. And I stared at this guitar, your guitar now.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I stayed 10 minutes staring at it.
Well,
now I never checked off all the boxes because I don't do that kind of thing. But I probably stood at it and just gawked for like 10 minutes. And now
you can look at it
my
for 10
common law
minutes at a time.
sister-in-law owns it. Going back earlier to something you said about Phil Lesh and Friends being kind of like your epitome of your Grateful Dead experience, this led me to think that you and I have shared something, even though we weren't actually there together. Right after Phil died, rest in peace, I saw a comment on Facebook, and you were mentioning to a friend, you were like, my greatest Grateful Dead experiences, again, because you never saw the Grateful Dead, were Phil Lesh and Friends at the Orpheum in Boston. And I immediately texted you and I was like, that is way up there for me too. Like those were very special shows for me. And now that I did a little research, I didn't realize that they weren't the same shows. So he played there in April. So I was at the April 8th and 9th show.
Of 2020?
No, it was 2000.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah, 2000. So, and I actually stayed for the second show, even though I was working Monday morning. It was a Sunday night, and I stayed through the whole show and drove 3 hours and got to work on no sleep. It was awesome. Yeah.
My experience.
Yeah, and you were there in October. So just tell me a little bit about why those shows were so special to you.
I was actually on the Cape for like a semester abroad. And
you did semester at sea and you were parked?
Yep. So I was living in Woods Hole at the time and super pumped that I was closer to Boston and Phil was going to be there. It was right before we were getting ready to set sail. So we left Woods Hole, I think October 15th, I want to say. And these shows were early October. And, you know, it was 4 nights. I drove back and forth. I think I stayed over in Boston one night.
Yeah, they were like the 4th or the 7th.
Mm-hmm. And I think the first 3 shows I went by myself. So that was, you know, I'm 20 years old and, you know, about to set off on this like epic journey on a tall ship. But this was an epic journey. It was, you know, I don't know if I had ever really gone to a show by myself before. And I just couldn't miss Phil being that close.
Highly recommended, by the way. I love going to shows by myself.
Totally. Yeah, you have so much fun. Meet amazing people. And it was just like a special moment in my life. I think being that age, in an unfamiliar city. The Orpheum is a beautiful theater. Beautiful. You know, one night I was up in the balcony and you just feel the balcony shaking.
That was going to be my comment. You took my comment. The shaking balcony. I was like, this is what it must have been like to see the Dead back in the day.
Right.
I love that.
Yep.
So listen.
Tear this whole building down.
Yeah, listen. It was the first post Jerry show that I was like, oh, this is gonna survive. There's gonna be a scene, because I didn't love like the other ones and stuff. I'll just be honest with you.
Yep.
But that Phil and Friends show, oh man, awesome. You saw the Q, by the way, the special lineup with Jimmy Herring and Lauren Haynes.
Right, which became, you know, Phil and Friends for a nice long run there.
But if you saw the Q, that's special.
Yeah.
Because that was the good stuff.
Yep.
The real good stuff. So awesome, Hill. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Hill, this has been awesome. Your relics are incredible. I'm so excited to have you on an early episode and get these amazing visuals and awesome stories. But now it's time for me to grill you.
Oh boy.
Okay. So I like to end my podcast with a little a game I call rapid fire. Just rapid fire questions, no thinking. You're not allowed to have much dead space. It's got to be the first thing that comes into your mind.
Pun intended.
Okay. Yes. Dead space. Yes. Going back to Phil with the negative space, hey? Here we go. So what are you thinking I'm going to ask? Well, I got one that's super controversial.
Uh-oh.
Drum space, are you going to the bathroom?
Fuck yeah, I'm going to the bathroom. I mean, I'm a lady, I have to pee a lot.
Okay.
So that's a great opportunity to go to the bathroom. You know, I probably would end up sticking around more for drums than space.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I'm going to follow that up because I know you went to the Sphere a few weeks ago. Did you go to the bathroom at the Sphere Drums in Space?
No way.
Totally different.
I wouldn't have missed a second of that experience.
Might be the best part of the show.
Yeah. Sitting in the chair and like
the haptics.
Yeah, really cool.
Very cool.
Really
if anybody gets to the Sphere, do not go to the bathroom during Drums in Space.
Nope. Sit down.
Incredible. Yeah, make sure you're sitting. Right, exactly right. All right, second thing. Worst concert you've ever seen?
Worst concert I ever saw. There was I think it was like a Dead. Worst concert ever.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Primus. Awful.
Oh boy, this is gonna.
Awful.
We are gonna get a lot of comments. Hillary.
I don't care. I am not a Les Claypool fan.
Oh,
He was weird. Oh no, I think it was actually Oysterhead. It wasn't Primus. It was Oysterhead, and it was weird and it was disjointed, and they weren't listening to each other, and they weren't playing music together. They were 3 musicians on stage doing I don't know what, but it wasn't good. It was Camden, probably sometime late 90s.
Yeah, whenever the Oysterhead album came out. Yeah, I had tickets, but it got canceled.
And you internet trolls, control me all you want. I stand by my opinion.
So should I not go see them in a few weeks when they come through?
It's their own. I know people love it.
No, I've seen Primus and I do kind of like it. So we'll talk off camera about that one. All right. And then lastly, I just wanted to, congratulate you. I know you got engaged, and
Thank you.
It just crossed my mind. A lot of the weddings, including my own, way back in the early 2000s, there were Dead songs played. In fact, my ex-wife and I were introduced to the crowd with Shakedown Street. We had a band and they learned it for us. It was really cool. So what song do you want to hear at your wedding? Grateful Dead.
If I'm going to go Grateful Dead, I mean, Standing on the Moon is a classic love song. I really love Peggy O. I would probably say Peggy O.
Classic Americana.
Yep.
Hey, it's a great choice. I didn't really think about Peggy O. Okay. I'll make sure that the DJ spins that at your wedding.
Thanks.
All right. Final segment, Mount Rushmore. You only get 4 Grateful Dead songs to listen to for the rest of your life. What are they? No thinking. Let's hear it.
Althea. Bertha. Should I go ABC? Yeah. Black-Throated Wind. And definitely Black Peter.
Black-Throated Wind is a really interesting one.
I love it.
Wow.
I've actually tried to learn how to play it on the guitar. Not very good.
All right, Hillary, thank you for coming on. You've thrown a lot at me, man, that I got to think about a lot of the things you have said today. Especially the Black-Throated Wind. I like it too, but top 4 of all time. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, more internet trolls coming your way.
Wake of the Blood album is one of my favorites, and I love that one.
Yeah, no, I love that song too. I'm mostly just kidding with you.
Hey,
why Black?
The internet's for.
Why Black Peter?
Black Peter's been a steady, poignant song in my life. Again, getting back to the theme of Grateful Dead music being poems. That song just has been meaningful. I was blessed enough to watch 2 of my important family members, my grandfather and my Uncle Dick. I was blessed to watch them pass into the unknown. And though that song would sort of play in my head during that period of each of those times.
That's really nice.
I also remember the night that I met Ben, who's my future husband, or the night that we had met a few times, and then it was sort of the night that things were clicking for us. I got in my car and randomly on whatever
Sirius or Spotify
or whatever playlist, Black Peter was playing, and that lyric, "See here how everything leads up to this day. And it's just like every day that's ever been before.
Except you meet your husband."
Right.
Very cool, Hilly. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
What we'll do for our listeners is we'll lead them out with a piece of Black Peter, a highlight from what's considered to often be the best Black Peter, which is October 29th, 1977. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining me on the So Many Roads podcast. I'm your host, Pete Booley. Dave Steinman is our show's technical director. Theme music by Sawyer Booley. Original artwork by Ashley Hodson. You can find us on YouTube, Meta, at our website, somanyroadspodcast.buzzsprout.com. If you have a unique story or perspective to share, feel free to make a comment on any platform or hit me up at somanyroadspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, let's keep the journey going.